So, welcome back to the T2 Hub. Spencer and I back here again. We're going to sit down and chat to you probably for the next 15 minutes. We want to talk a little bit around the human iceberg theory that we have here at Trans 2. Some of you watching will have been through the Human Iceberg Day with us. Some of you won't have. But it's the model, it's sort of the principle and the model that we start off with, that we develop all of our training and development services around. We think it's really important. And maybe we can just have a bit of a chat, Spence, about what it is. Maybe a little bit about print. We use the print tool within our approaches and the unconscious motivator side of things and why that's valuable, etc. And just maybe get people thinking about how much they know about themselves in terms of self-awareness.
Yeah.
So I guess the human iceberg theory for those of you who have not been through anything with us is we recognised early on, didn't we, that actually if you just focus and deliver training on what we call above the waterline behaviours, traits and characteristics, i.e. the way people see and observe you, the way you portray yourself, then you might find some benefit and value in that, but you're likely, in most cases, to go back into the organisation and revert to type.
Yeah.
If you don't understand what's beneath the waterline, driving and regulating those behaviours.
Yeah.
So the human iceberg has 3 levels to it. We've got the above the waterline behaviours and traits. Things like, for any of you watching who have done insights or Myers-Briggs testing, SDI, social styles, all of these really useful psychometric testing tools which tell us about our behaviour and how we extend ourselves, you'll have enjoyed doing it. But does it drive long-lasting change? I mean, I guess it's the way it's received and delivered is a big part of it. But what we found is actually you need to go a bit deeper than that.
Yeah.
Because how you externalise yourself is one thing. What we know through psychology and through our studies of performance psychology is that there are 1 or 2 key unconscious motivators that manifest within us between the ages of, say, 1 to 21, early 20s, through our experiences and exposures with our parents, our social environment, you know, friends we grew up with, the state we grew up on, our educational years, and sort of the events that happen in that time frame become anchors. And it sort of forms the way we see the world. So you have these motivators manifest within you, and then they drive and regulate that behaviour, why I'm a red, you know, why you're a blue or a green, etc. And that's the middle. And then the bottom level of the iceberg is the final bit of the human iceberg, which is where the hell did those motivators come from? In those formative years, what happened? What anchors occurred which were likely to trigger that particular motivator within you? And therefore, in everything we do, we try to start with the human iceberg and we try to lift the lid for the delegates and for people on why they are like they are, where it comes from. And then they have more self-awareness and a stronger chance of intervening and making positive change. And whether it's sales or customer service or leadership, we still start with that. Let's find out about you first and then we'll develop you as a professional.
And I totally get that. I think from a starting point, you've got to understand who you are, where you're coming from before you start looking at anybody else. I think the structure of the human iceberg, I think from an educational point of view, from an experience point of view, I think it's structured fantastically. Starting at above the waterline and then going down below the waterline to unconscious motivators, then even further down to sense of purpose. And when we start talking about the above the waterline behaviour, there's a lot of sort of recognition. There's a lot of sniggers of recognition. Yeah, I do that. Yeah, I do. Oh, yeah, that's me. Or I know somebody like that. And that's all well and good. But again, that's above the waterline behaviour. And when you start talking about above the waterline behaviour, we're talking about behaviours that are able to be changed. So depending on what mood you're in, what situation you're in, what context you find yourself in, then you might find that, generally speaking, you're an expressive. However, you may come into a situation where you need to be a driver, and as much as it might not be a natural thing, you can step into that. It might be that you've got to be an amiable, so you can sort of slip into amiable and then slip out when needed. But you might find that you have to be an analytical, like yourself, Martin. You yourself, you're a natural driver, aren't you? Would you accept that?
Absolutely.
You're a natural driver.
Definitely in the workplace as well, driver. Yeah, end game focused. Get there as quick as we can.
And not necessarily focused on detail.
Not so much
when you're a driver. However, you run a business, so there is a requirement for you to be analytical to a certain degree.
Yes.
So you will change to be an analytical. It's not necessarily your comfort zone, but you will change to be an analytical when you are required.
Yeah,
and that's back out.
And that's an important point, because we find that you are who you are, but then, which is an unconscious state. So in my natural form, without even thinking about it, I'm a very driven, end game, task focused, goal driven person, right? And visionary with it. I can see it and I want to get there.
Certainly, yeah.
But I sort of want to sort the details out on the way, rather than waiting. And that serves me well sometimes and not in others. But yeah, to your point, I can be more analytical, considered, prepared, but it's a conscious decision.
Yes.
And at the top of the iceberg, above the waterline, we're all like this. And these testing tools like Insights and Myers-Briggs and Social Styles, etc., are a really good indicator of how you operate, of your preferences.
And it's really interesting. I find it's really interesting when we start talking to delegates and we start talking about social styles, different behaviours and things like that. And we also mention print. And 9 times out of 10, people say, yeah, I've done something like print before. I've done Myers-Briggs and I've done Insight and I've done this. And we're like, no. Different thing. Because we're starting to go below the waterline when we start talking about print.
So just for the audience who haven't experienced it, print is what Spencer's talking about. Print is a tool, a particular type of testing, psychometric test or profiling tool, which was created by the Paul Hertz group in the US.
Yeah.
Paul Hertz is a statistician. Is that the right? I always get that word wrong.
I won't disagree with you.
Yeah, statistician, and he was a protege of Edwards Deming, who was the grandfather of Agile and Lean revolution in processes and manufacturing. And he sort of broke off and really started to become intrigued by what drove people, what was the motivations behind people's behaviour, not so much how they displayed them. And that's where print was born. And we have licensed, we've practiced in, and we've delivered many different types of psychometric testing, and all the ones we've mentioned, like Insight, Social Styles, STIs, Myers-Briggs, very, very good at revealing preferences and character types. But what we found with print was it just has that difference. It goes down a layer and it starts to uncover the unconscious bias, if you like, or the unconscious motivators that have manifested within our psyche from those formative years that drive us to be like that in the first place.
Yeah.
There's only 9 things human beings can be motivated by. And you take the print test, it scores you a percentage match against the 9, and you will come out with the major and the minor, or the 1 or 2 motivators that are driving and regulating your behaviour. And to your comment, people say, I've done loads of this type of stuff before. And then they do print, and then they understand what's driving them, and then they go through the process of what that means and what the triggers are, and it's mind-blowing for them.
It is.
It gives them a level of self-awareness that they never had prior. Now, I'll ask you a question. You've been with us almost a year.
Yeah.
And you're of an age, a tenured age.
Oh, thank you very much.
Is that okay?
Very diplomatic.
So you're experienced, right? Yeah, 22 years in the military, many years outside. It's not over the hill, by the way, but what I'm saying is you've done a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You've been on a lot of courses.
Yeah.
I have, but you have in particular, and you've worked in a lot of environments.
Yeah.
First thing we did with you when you came here was we printed you.
Yes.
So you took your print test.
Yeah.
And it revealed in you, for example, Spence, that your core motivators that drive everything you are is to have peace and harmony in your environment.
Yes.
And in the working life, in your personal life, to have that element of no conflict, no discomfort, no discord. But you've also got to be perfect, correct, and right.
Yeah.
Which means you like things done properly to a standard and in a certain way. And you also live in a fair and just world.
And that's predominant for me.
Rules and structure and doing the right thing and integrity is really important. So peace and harmony and perfect, correct, and right, that was revealed to you not so long back. talk to me a little bit about what your first thoughts were and your experience with print yourself.
Well,
what's it done for you?
For me, I've got to be honest with you. I didn't see him coming. I didn't see it coming at all. With print, again, my first exposure of it was me going through the print report, doing the actual print myself.
Yeah.
When it came out with those numbers, to sort of pick the peace and harmony being a major and the perfect correct and right being a minor, I was like, okay, fair enough then. What's this all about? And then we went through the print report, and we looked at my best self, my shadow self, and it sort of gave me a bit of an idea. And I've got to be honest with you, I think there was nothing new in there, but the way it was structured made me think more. It's not as if I disagreed with it. I didn't disagree with it. But I sort of thought, well, hold on a minute. How was this pitched? How do I get this? It took me about 3 days to get my head around it. I can't lie. It took me about 3 days to get my head around it.
But that is and this is what we find with unconscious motivators driving people's performance. You know, it's one of them where you have to reflect on it.
Yeah.
You know, because it hits you with something, and some people in the room, when we genuinely do it, some people who we work with one-to-one or in a group environment they read it and they go, that's me.
Yeah.
Very and they're absolutely bought in, understand it, and they resonate with it straight away. Other people go,
Yeah.
And it's not that they're not sure they're disagreeing, but they've been presented with something for the first time in a context they don't understand.
Yes, yeah.
I've never really thought that. I've always thought about how I behave and how I react to situations and what my personality style is.
Yeah.
But I've never considered why.
Yes, and that was why. That was one of the things is when we went onto the trigger, when we started looking at the triggers, was things that moved me from best self into shadow behaviour. And I was looking down these triggers. I was thinking, how do they know this? How do they know this? Because it was very much based on the peace and harmony, perfect, correct and right. The little things that really push my buttons, grind my gears. How do they know this? How do they know? And it's so scarily accurate.
I always remember one girl saying to me one lady saying to me in a training session. She was quite introverted and stayed quite quiet throughout the process. She came up to me at the end and she said, "Do you know what?" She said, "There's only one person who could have described and understood me more than this, and that's my mother."
Right.
And that was a really powerful statement because she was absolutely, how do you know what in the core of me drives fundamentally everything I believe in?
Yeah.
And it's and Paul Hertz, going back to Paul Hertz, who created print, he's a statistician, right? So working out the 9 things human beings can be motivated by, working out a series of questions, scenarios, or situations that could be answered, which will, by a process of elimination, match you against the things that drive you.
Yeah.
And this is the other thing worth mentioning here. Most psychometric tests can be answered how you want to be perceived. I've done it myself.
Yeah.
Myers-Briggs Insights, I can make myself a red. I can make myself a yellow.
Yeah.
By answering the questions, right? I'm going for a job interview. Are you good at detail, Martin, and planning? Well, me and you know I'm not, right?
Yeah.
But I can answer yes, because I know it's relevant for the job.
Yeah.
So in most psychometric testing, you can, if you wanted to. Now, we'd like to think most people are honest, but you can answer how you want to be perceived.
Yeah, certainly.
Print, I have done it 3 times. I've tried to break it, and it still gets me every time.
Yeah.
Because you can be on that test for 10 questions, 10 minutes, or 60 questions, 60 minutes, because the algorithm is trying to pick up your unconscious motivators by a series. And we don't know the come behind the algorithm because Paul Hertz keeps it close to his chest. However he's done it, it's an amazing experience.
Very much so, yeah. I've never come across something
So
like
you've probably, in the last year, coached, developed, or worked with, would it be fair to say 300, 400 people?
Probably more.
Say 500 people who have all gone through the print experience.
Yeah.
How many have cast iron disagreed with their unconscious motivators?
Before I answer that, I need to qualify my answer.
As a one, you would, right?
Yeah.
Perfect, correct, and right.
Yes, certainly. Before I qualify that, I've probably met less than 10 people who have basically dismissed it.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Out of that 10 people, 8 of them have probably come back and said, later on, said, you know what? I think there's something in this. So, yeah, about probably 10, maybe less
So you're
than
talking
10.
less
And
than-
they've totally dismissed it. Yeah, that's not me, that's not me. Some of them, and this is it, some of them, have, when they've actually read through it and they've gone through the best self, because the way we reveal it, they've read that and they've gone, that's not me. That's not me. There's nothing in there that's me. Then when we've gone on shadow behaviour, that's me.
And this is an important point in the reveal of the reason understanding unconscious motivators is so important is because we find that when human beings understand at a surface level how they act and what their personality style is and how they come across, they tend to drive very little change. And I use the word tend because there are a few people, or there is a certain amount of people who can take that and apply it and consciously think, I want to apply it.
Yeah.
But in general, surface level knowledge of behaviours and preferences and styles
Yeah.
doesn't always drive a long lasting change.
No.
When we come down into the unconscious motivators, so what is driving that behaviour, it seems to have, for some, life changing repercussions.
Yes, certainly.
Some people genuinely, for the first time in their life, become conscious and aware of why they are like they are and what's driving that.
Yeah.
And I think then to finish off this sort of short discussion on this is let's go down a level further. So where did those motivators come from? So we know with print, there's 9 things human beings can be motivated by.
Yeah.
And that then drives your personality and outward behaviour and
yeah.
traits. But why are you a 9-1, peace and harmony and perfect, correct and right?
Yeah.
And I'm an 8-3, which for the camera is strong and self-reliant and succeed and achieve.
Yeah.
So my motivators are different to yours. My
Yeah.
motivators are goal-driven, success-driven, and I want to do it being in control.
Yeah.
I like to be in positions of leadership. I like to lead people. I like to come alive in a crisis. I like
motivate,
to
inspire.
motivate all of, and so I'm very independent. I like to be unconsciously competent if I can and do things on my own back. And I also want to achieve things. Whereas you're, hang on a second, there's more to it than that. There's a right way and a wrong way. There's rules, there's structure. We've got to think about this.
Yeah.
And along the way, can we all get along and not have any arguments
Yeah.
and discomfort?
Yeah.
So my question is, the bottom level of the iceberg is what we call sense of purpose.
Certainly.
Where did those motivate? Why am I an 8-3 and why are you a 9-1?
I think it's fascinating. I think it's absolutely fascinating. My take on it is basically nature versus nurture. So when we start looking at nature versus nurture, I think our sort of take on it is 80% nurture, 20% nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when we start talking about that, we're talking the nurture, quite a large percentage of it is outweighing the nature.
And when we talk about nurture, Spence,
Yeah.
we're talking about the main things that sort of constitute to the nurture in the 80% is parental, social, and educational.
Yeah. So throughout from birth to your late teens, early 20s, you're constantly getting messages, aren't you? So from your parental, so from your parents and from your home life, educational. So from your school, the teachers, how they teach you, what they teach you, the people you're at school with, all this, that and the other, and social, the people you hang around with, the people who, your friends, possibly their parents, people who influence
Your
you.
environment, your estate, your village, the culture of what's happening around you in those formative years.
So those 3 things come under nurture, which makes up the massive 80% of the influences. But that 20%, although it's smaller, it's massively affecting because it's how you perceive those messages.
Great point. Because what people ask me is they say, Martin, 2 people grow up on a council estate, parents separate, they grow up with nothing, they struggle.
Yeah.
One goes into crime and drugs, one becomes a successful entrepreneur, millionaire, right? How do you account, therefore, for those people? And you've just hit the nail on the head. In psychology, it's about perception. There are generally, if we strip it right back, parental, social, educational, you will either want to replicate what you observe and what's happened to you, or you will want to rebel and be anything but it.
Yeah.
Which is why some people like to follow their parents, Some people like to do the total opposite
Yeah.
and want to be the total opposite.
Yeah.
Some people want to carry on living where they live and socialising where they socialise. Some people's dream is to get out. Some people never want to have to rely on education again or go into higher education.
Yeah.
Me. Some people fundamentally place a value on having that degree or having continuous education.
Yeah.
So you either rebel or you replicate. So you can have two people from a similar instance who take completely different paths.
Certainly, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we talk about the identical twins. So physically identical, genetically identical twins. They have the same parental influences because their parents were together at the same time. They're in the same house at the same time. They went to the same school at the same time, in the same classes with the same teachers, got taught the same things. They hung around with the same people. Everything that they experienced was almost identical. But that point, that one pivotal point, when the father turns around to both boys at the same time and says, "Boys, you've got to get your heads around the fact that you're going nowhere. You're going to achieve nothing.
Yeah.
You're going to work in that factory. You're going to live on this estate. Get used to it because that's what's going to happen." And one son says, "Fair enough then, that's the way my life is.
That's my destiny."
The other son says, "Really?
Yeah.
I'm going to show you."
I'll see about that.
And from that point, identical twins diverge.
Different unconscious motivators manifest.
Yeah.
Different interpretations of that, and the journeys begin. Yeah. Right. So to wrap this up, and almost give anybody who's been through the Human Iceberg, then they know their print and their sense of purpose and their behaviours. And for those who don't, what we're trying to say here, I think what we're trying to say is, in order to be productive in your personal or professional life, truly productive and truly in control of being your best self,
Yeah.
and being fulfilled
Yeah.
and happy and all of those great things, you can't be it every day, but more often than not,
Yeah.
it's not just about knowing how what your personality style you have, or if you're an introvert, extrovert, or whether you're a red, green, or blue, or whatever it might be. It's not just about knowing that. That is useful.
Yeah.
But where the true self-awareness comes and where the power comes from, where you take back a bit of control, is when you understand what motivators have manifested within you that is driving that.
Yeah.
And even more powerfully, if you can establish where the hell they come from.
Yeah.
And I guess I always talk about this, but the reason why that's changed my life is because I won't share it on camera. I share it in the rooms. But my bit of my backstory and growing up before I entered the military, I was angry at for quite some years. So much so that I was raging against the machine. I was taking the world on. I was angry. I hated authority in the military, which is why I was always in trouble. Right? And it wasn't serving me well, Spence.
No.
And I got through it, but I'm thinking back now, I was a little shit. It wasn't serving me well. I had a few great relationships, but generally I had quite a lot of conflict with people as well, because I always knew I had this self-belief and this don't hem me in, don't dictate to me type thing. But for years I was angry at it until I went through the iceberg layers and I understood that I'm strong and self-reliant and to succeed and achieve for a reason.
Yeah.
And actually, when I look back at the reasons in my sense of purpose in my early life that triggered me to be that way, I can now embrace it. If I could go back, I wouldn't change it because it makes me who I am.
Yeah.
And since I've started to look at it in a completely different life, my personal and professional life has gone like that. Yeah. And that's the power of what we call true self-awareness.
Yes, I'd agree. And that's how we find out. By using tools like this, by having these experiences, by being honest with ourselves, and basically getting to know ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. So tips out there is, if you've done any form of psychometric testing or personal development, great, revisit it, embrace it, but we would implore you to look a bit deeper. Start to explore unconscious motivators and unconscious bias. Start to look at sense of purpose. Start to look at anchors and the origins of where that might have manifested from. Because when you have the true picture, you can absolutely accept it, embrace it, and harness it moving forward.
Yes, certainly.
I think that's what we're saying.
I agree.
Awesome. Thank you very much.